I'm Susan Murphy. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, flying off the shelves, the explosive moments prompting safety warnings for this must-have holiday gift.
I think it's just humane. We help our animals out when they suffer. Why don't we allow the same for ourselves?
An emotional choice for patients and loved ones, and the doctors who want to honor their Hippocratic oath, why they say a new aid in dying law helps prevent hurt. And furry bundles of joy designed in a test tube, the canine research that may help scientists prevent diseases. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. The long-awaited cross-border bridge linking the U.S. with Tijuana International Airport is now open in Otay Mesa. KPBS Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero has the story.
Say hi, amigo.
San Diego resident Carol Hopkins was one of the first people to use the cross-border express. She says it's going to change her life.
I fly back and forth almost every month to Mexico because I have a business there, a small hotel. And the hassle of travel has been huge through the years.
Usually she has to walk about half a mile to cross the border, then take a taxi to the Tijuana airport. On the way back, she sometimes waits hours in border crossing traffic.
So that process is pretty difficult if you're carrying a fair amount of luggage, and I usually am. And so this is so much easier.
The new bridge, suspended above the U.S.-Mexico border, allows airport passengers to bypass congestion at the ports of entry. To use the bridge, they must buy one-way tickets for $18 or round-trip tickets for $36. San Diego resident Gibran Fernandez printed his boarding pass ahead of his flight to Mexico City for a friend's wedding. Like many San Diegans, he uses the Tijuana airport whenever he flies somewhere in Mexico because it's cheaper than flying from San Diego.
Going and coming, it's a little hard at times, but maybe I'll be coming more now, or going more now with this easy access.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection has the option to check southbound passengers and will always do X-ray baggage checks and other revisions of those coming northbound from the Tijuana airport. Joseph Meisenhelter, Assistant Port Director for U.S. Customs and Border Protection, says the process is the same as going through any other port of entry.
The only extra requirement they're going to have is to actually be a ticketed passenger. Everything else is what you're already used to.
The fee to use the cross-border express is waived from now until December 18th. The bridge is expected to boost travel between San Diego and Tijuana. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
KPBS videographer Chris Maui helped produce that story. Fronteras reporting is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Gusty winds are expected to tear through San Diego County this week. We may see winds reach up to 70 miles per hour in the mountains starting tomorrow night. Today, a high surf advisory prompted beach businesses in Oceanside to set up sandbags. The second of nearly back-to-back swells may hit the coast early Friday morning. That has also prompted a warning for San Diego beaches. You know the drill. Elevated surf combined with strong rip currents may lead to dangerous swimming conditions. The high surf conditions may last through Sunday. Cooler weather is on the way to San Diego. A slight chance for showers by the coast with 60s. More of the same with the inland valleys in the 60s. We may see a few snow flurries in the mountains with temperatures from the 60s to the 40s. Feeling like summer in the deserts with 70s and 60s. Federal disaster officials say they are prepared for the worst if El Nino-fueled storms create havoc in California. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has details.
Federal and state officials have been game planning for months. They want to be ready if the state experiences flooding, landslides, or high coastal tides linked to storms. The state's Director of Emergency Services, Mark Ghilarducci, says officials have a pretty good idea of where the risk is.
We see this coming. There should be no reason why we don't do everything we can to ensure that our local governments are prepared, the public is informed, our state and federal partners collaborate together so that we are as ready as possible when it starts to rain.
Federal officials are also ready to help with resources or money. Bob Fenton says a big key to tapping into available federal help is understanding the process.
Local governments will declare states of emergency, make requests to the governor. The governor will, at some point, based on the size, the magnitude, the scale, declare a state of emergency. At that point, the governor will make a decision whether he wants to go to the president and request a federal declaration.
Federal and state officials are practicing responding to disasters, so they'll be ready if they're called upon to help. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Dozens of California government entities are suing America's top wireless companies. They're accusing Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile of ignoring parts of their contracts that would have helped the state save millions of dollars. The carriers were contractually obligated to help each of the government bodies find the best rate plan at the cheapest price. Representatives from 4 carriers did not return requests for comment. Federal courts may be siding with Pacific Gas and Electric as the company heads to trial for the deadly San Bruno explosion. Yesterday, a federal judge cut in half the top fine prosecutors can seek against the gas and electric company. This is for its alleged criminal conduct connected to a natural gas explosion that killed 8 people in 2010. PG&E may face a maximum fine of more than $500 million when it goes to trial in March. By state law, the only way SDGE can lobby on an alternative energy program called Community Choice is to form an independent marketing district. The district would be separate from what customers pay for, but environmentalists say it's not separate enough.
There's supposed to be a firewall so that this independent marketing arm wouldn't be colluding with the experts at San Diego Gas and Electric to undermine and undercut the ability of cities to offer choice to their residents and businesses.
The Climate Action Campaign, as well as the City of Del Mar and County Supervisor Diane Jacob, are filing official protest letters with the state. An SDG&E spokeswoman says the district will be separate from the utility and is needed so the utility can contribute to the energy conversation. A potential ballot measure to set aside funds to repair roads and other infrastructure is moving forward. KPBS reporter Claire Trageser has details.
The San Diego City Council's Infrastructure Committee voted to send the ballot measure to the full City Council. That was over the objections of Councilwoman Marty Emerald, who says it needs further study. The measure could raise $4 to $5 billion over 30 years, but that's not enough to cover the funding gap. That gap is about $1.4 billion over the next 5 years. Councilman Mark Kersey, who proposed the measure, says it can't fix everything.
I think a lot of people were hoping that we would come out with something that would solve the entire crisis in one measure, and I just don't think that's realistic. If you look back at the fiscal crisis, the pension crisis, there were multiple votes of the public required for each of those to get our arms around the full extent of the problem.
The council will discuss next month whether to put it on the June ballot.
Socalled Navy Broadway complex cleared one of its final hurdles today. The Civic San Diego Board of Directors signed off on the billion-dollar project. The Navy headquarters downtown would be replaced with office and hotel towers, retail and restaurant space, a museum, and a public park. The Navy would occupy one of the office towers. A newly built warship is on its way to San Diego. The USS Jackson is one of 16 littoral combat ships that will be home-ported at Naval Base San Diego. It was commissioned last weekend in Mississippi. It's named after the state's capital of Jackson. The 400-foot-long vessel can counter a variety of threats, from submarines to mines. Navy officials say it's one of the fastest and most technologically advanced warships in the fleet. It may be one of the hottest gifts of the season, but the gadget requiring a balancing act has consumer safety advocates worried. Associated Press reporter Robert Bumstead tracks the safety risks connected to hoverboards.
They're called hoverboards. These two-wheeled self-balancing scooters are shaping up to be a hot gift this holiday season. But before you buy, some owners and safety experts want you to see this.
Mom, get some water or something.
This is Timothy Cade's brand new hoverboard on fire.
I hadn't even rode it like 7,500 feet, and it exploded. It was just like boom! And I'm like, Mom, my hoverboard just blew up.
And Kate is not alone. There have been reports around the country of similar accidents.
This is the hoverboard.
This Louisiana mom says her son's brand new hoverboard exploded moments after it was plugged in, setting her house on fire.
I could hear it. It sounded like a lit firework. It was just like that.
The boards are largely made in China and imported to the U.S. by companies that market them using their own brand. Several hoverboard manufacturers in China declined to comment on the safety concerns.
Okay, ready?
The devices are a lot like the Segway that was popular more than a decade ago, but much cheaper. You can pick one up for less than $300 online. Many are marketed as children's toys.
You know, the hoverboards, first and foremost, are not toys.
Sean Kane is the president of Safety Research and Strategies Incorporated, a consumer safety advocate. He says there's no way to guarantee they've been safety tested.
The hoverboard does not fall into categories where there are regulations. So there are no guidelines and standards for this type of device. The safety and fitness of them is really unknown. The fire problems, appear to be coming from the charging and potentially the lithium-ion batteries.
And there's always the risk of a fall. Many hoverboards will reach speeds of 12 miles per hour with no handlebars to grab if you lose your balance. The Consumer Product Safety Commission says it's received 20 reports of emergency room-related injuries since September. Still, owners of hoverboards seem to love the products. Cade says he's already ordered a replacement from a different company.
So I'm hoping they worked out the kinks.
Robert Bumstead, Associated Press.
What is going on, dude?
On the health desk, if you've ever taken a CPR class, you're probably familiar with the training mannequin called Rescue Annie. Today, there are many more sophisticated versions of that doll. SciTech reporter Anne-Marie Berger shows us how it prepares military personnel who are treating battlefield trauma.
Is that the ketamine? Yeah. Okay, so just give 2 cc's of that, the 100 milligrams should be good. Okay, let that go, come up here. We're gonna put both hands on the neck like this. Okay.
These military medical personnel are working hard to stop the bleeding, clear airways, and keep these patients alive. Clearly, these aren't real live patients, but the actions of those tending to their wounds will determine if they survive their hypothetical trauma. Located at St. Louis University Hospital, this is the Center for Sustainment of Trauma and Readiness Skills, or CSTARS.
We bring in individuals, Guard and active duty military members, mainly in the Air Force, to give them 2 weeks hands-on patient care experience.
You got the 2? Got the 2.
Deliberate practice, hands-on experience, and level 1 trauma is key in preparing these doctors, nurses, and medics for deployment.
It is very important because the majority of members of the medical community do not have any actual experience working with patients who have been critically injured or critically ill.
Air Force medics in the Guard in their civilian world may be police officers or even bank tellers, and active military medical personnel may have only worked in clinics. For many of them, working on these critically injured dummies is their first exposure to trauma. And these dummies, well, they're not so dumb.
So do their injuries mirror what they might see in a situation in Afghanistan?
This mannequin, as a matter of fact, he is a TBI, traumatic brain injury. Then we have a third country national child, okay, and he's a femur fracture. The soldier on the end, he is a burn blast patient.
These mannequins, the SimMan 3Gs, are manufactured by Lærdal, the Norwegian company that developed the rescue mannequins used for a typical CPR class. But the SimMan is much, much more advanced.
Sir, can you speak? Can you tell me your name? Check the pulses.
The SimMan 3G simulates actual trauma scenarios that these airmen could face in combat and have physiological attributes that may be monitored and treated. They have breathing, circulation, and cardiac features and vascular access. They have capabilities to bleed, blink their eyes, secrete fluids, and have seizures. Oxygen levels can be monitored. They can talk.
What? I can't breathe.
All while being closely monitored by machines and Air Force personnel.
As the patient is deteriorating, if they take the necessary measures to correct the abnormalities that the patient is having, we can make that patient improve if they take the necessary measures. If they don't, the patient's going to continue to deteriorate and the patient may expire like they did on this scenario.
He died 3 minutes ago.
We don't try to keep the patient alive to make them feel good. We can't do that.
Because that's not real.
That's not real. Patients die. That's just the way it is.
St. Louis University is one of 3 C-STAR locations in the country. The others are located in Baltimore and Cincinnati.
It's needed so much, especially as we get winding down from our areas of engagement. You're going to have more and more individuals with less experience of treating patients like this. So these programs, the ones we have here and Cincinnati and Baltimore, are so much more important to keep individuals spun up on the most current practice guidelines of treating trauma patients.
You can see more stories like this on SciTech Now, Sundays at 5:30 p.m. here on KPBS. Smoking pot may cause a case of the munchies, but San Diego researchers say at the statewide level, medical marijuana may actually lead to weight loss. KPBS science reporter David Wagner has details.
In a new study, researchers looked at statewide obesity trends between 1990 and 2012. And what they found is that obesity declined by 2 to 6% in states that decided to legalize medical marijuana. They offer a few explanations for this unexpected link. They say medical pot may help older people lead a more active lifestyle. That's because it could help relieve the kind of pain that can prevent people from exercising. And they suspect in younger people, people could be drinking less alcohol in states where it's easier to get medical marijuana. That means that people could be opting for a lower calorie high and losing some of that beer belly. San Diego State economics professor Joseph Sabia led the study.
The data seems to suggest that substitutions away from alcohol and increased exercise may swamp any munchies effect that might be there, so that the net effect is a decline in obesity.
California was the first state to legalize medical marijuana. Sabia says we could be seeing some of the highest declines in obesity of all the states he studied. He also says that states could see more than $58 in per-person medical savings each year as a result of these kinds of laws. David Wagner, KPBS News.
Next year, Californians who have been diagnosed with a terminal illness will have the option to choose exactly when they'd like to die. That's because a new law will allow people who have less than 6 months to live to get a lethal dose of drugs from a doctor. In the first part of a 3-part series, KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg tells us about a woman who's ready to exercise her right to die.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Is Nita coming in?
Yeah. Honey?
When Eureka Strato has a medical appointment, she likes to tell her doctor what she and her wife Juanita are up to.
Oh, wow.
I got that swim chair that I told you about.
Oh, cool.
Had family yesterday, friends on Saturday, and then the rest of the week we get to relax, just the two of us.
Nice.
Yeah.
But after a few moments, Dr. Sunita Shailam asked the $64,000 question.
So how's your health doing?
Yeah, it's going okay, you know. My hands are getting weaker, more of a claw. I got a Julie now to help me with my showering and getting dressed in the morning, helping with cleanup and stuff like that.
Strato has ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, otherwise known as Lou Gehrig's disease. It's a rapidly progressive neurological disease that eventually robs people of the ability to move, eat, or even breathe.
Take a deep breath in here.
Strato was diagnosed with ALS in 2013.
Well, when I heard ALS, I had no clue. I didn't know what it meant. And then I read up on it and I was mortified.
Are your legs a little swollen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Strato used to be exceptionally fit. Now she can no longer walk or go to the bathroom by herself. ALS is invariably fatal. Strato figures she has less than 6 months left.
If what they say at the clinic is true, then it might be more than that, but that would be on feeding tubes and, tracheotomy or whatever that's called, and that's not something that I want to do at all.
That's why Strada wants to take advantage of California's new aid in dying law when it takes effect next year. To do so, Strada will need to get another physician to confirm her terminal diagnosis. The doctors will have to affirm that Strada is mentally competent to make her own decisions. She'll also have to make 2 requests to Dr. Shylem for a lethal dose of drugs.
138/92.
And at the end, Strada will have to have the ability to take the medication by herself.
And, it's not easy.
No.
Strada says she's glad she'll have the option to die before she totally loses control of her body.
I think it's just humane. We help our animals out when they suffer. Why don't we allow the same for ourselves? And I know that they're worried about abuse, but the way that this is written is like you have to say it. Personally, you have to say that this is what you want, that you totally understand it.
Shylem concedes that some physicians don't want to have anything to do with helping a patient die.
I actually also spoke with the local palliative care doctor that works with the hospital, and she personally would not do it. I was surprised because she does end-of-life care. I spoke to a couple other colleagues. I was in the hospital yesterday, and they, one of them was thrilled and all for it, and one of them just said, he just thought there was a lot of room for abuse.
Under the law, doctors can refuse to help a patient take their own life. But Shylem believes doctors have a duty to their patients to relieve suffering, whether it's physical or emotional.
The number one rule in medicine in the Hippocratic Oath is do no harm. It's like you want to prevent hurt. Yeah. You actually want to prevent hurt by doing this.
Yeah.
At the end of their visit, Shylem assures Strada and Juanita that she'll help them when the time comes.
It's wonderful to see you guys, and towards the end and whatever, Jorge and I will be there for you. If we need to come to your home, we'll do whatever it takes to make you comfortable, and I don't want you to be scared about it. I think whatever happens, we'll make it as pleasant as we can.
Right.
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, we'll find out how some other doctors feel about the aid in dying law and how a similar law has worked in Oregon.
Thank you, Janita.
Oh, you're welcome.
Take care.
Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
Okay.
KPBS video journalist Katie Shulov helped produce that story.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next News Hour, we explore the making of political polls. How accurate are they, and what should we read into them? That's Wednesday on the PBS News Hour.
Scientists paved the way for healthier pets using in vitro technology. A team of scientists and veterinarians in Cornell University introduced to the world the first dogs conceived in a test tube. Scientists say these in vitro puppies could be a major breakthrough in conserving endangered species and preventing disease, even in humans.
Because it opens up the possibility that we could identify certain genes that cause disease and then fix those, replace them with a good copy of the gene before those dogs are even born. So instead of trying to cure disease, we can help prevent it from happening in the first place.
The puppies are 5 months old, and all but one female were adopted. She's being kept by the lab to have her own litter. 'Tis the season to help a furry friend. San Diego animal shelters are launching holiday events to inspire more adoptions of cats and dogs in need of a home this winter. Many shelters have cut adoption rates in half for animals 1 year or older. Animal experts say there are less stray animals on the street now compared to many years ago, but there are still thousands of stray animals in need of a home.
I think numbers are statewide trending down, not quickly enough for all of us, but we are being very proactive as far as programs to address not only spay and neuter and preventing unwanted births, but also retention, helping people through various programs to keep animals in their home.
Animal shelters are also helping low-income families keep their adopted pets by offering free vaccinations and low-cost spay and neutering. Holiday tunes hitting all the right notes at the state capitol. A choir group entertained fans inside the rotunda this week. The singers were members of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The caroling engineers formed in the early 1990s. They're based in Sacramento. They perform every holiday season for state workers. This week's concert is part of a daily holiday music series at the state capitol. Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Tomorrow on Morning Edition, an increase in illegal migration of Central Americans has been linked to high levels of gang violence and a very weak economy. How people are trying to change all of that. And on Midday Edition, will it save Comic-Con? As the signature gatherers say, a closer look at new Citizens Initiative petition that San Diego shoppers are being asked to sign. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.